Hey guys, so I'm just doing an opinion piece kind of and to share with you some things that have been coming up recently, lately. And it's kind of like on the collective level, why are we stuck? Why can't we all just get along? Why is this not moving ahead? And I recently watched, and I really recommend to you guys to watch this video with Terrence Howard and Joe Rogan. And he says a lot where I have to rewatch the video and really see what's going on. But he does say a lot where I'm thinking, wow, wow, like just wow. And one of the things he was explaining is why we have such a linear geometric view of things. And how the in antiquity they thought the earth was flat. There were only two planes, and initially it sounds really simplistic, but the way he phrases it, the way he puts it out there, I really recommend you watch the video, and I'll link it in the description box below. But what got me thinking was that, you know, as a collective, we're really stuck, and we're so afraid of moving into the next level. We're afraid to make that step forward. And as my guides have told me, the information of what individuals have to do is already out there. It's going to be repackaged, repurposed, assorted and assembled to whatever level the ego is on, and it will continue. But the base premise of love yourself, learn to love yourself, and love the other, that will always be. That is an eternal guideline that is never going to change, is never going to go anywhere. But the collective is really stuck about moving into that. I mean, it's not as stuck as it used to be, but it's sluggish, slow. And of course, that has to do with all the various systems that we've built in order to live this life. And these systems are like stories that we've created. They're nothing more than stories that we all decided to agree upon, all decide to perpetrate, all decide to feed, all decide to live under. But if all of us came together and said, you know what, we don't believe this story anymore. It's not giving us what it used to give us because we've advanced beyond what the story is giving us. We need to change our stories now. If we could do that, then things would change like that. But we're so attached on a collective and on a personal to the story because now the story, we've given the story all the power. We don't keep the power to ourselves. We give the story the power, and the story ends up having power over us, which is really bizarre because the story doesn't have an awareness. It has a consciousness because everything that we live in and reside, everything is conscious. But, like relationships have energies, right? That kind of keep the dynamics going. The relationship itself can be an entity that can be worked with within people, between people, or within a group or what have you. But the story is very, very similar. So it has this energy that wants to perpetuate, that wants to keep things going the way it is, to keep the story alive, right? And so we have this story about the way the world is, the way everything is, and we stick with it, and we criticize others. Like we criticize, for example, we heard the story that, for example, we can't date the pyramids properly because there's a certain cultural group that would be offended if the pyramids were over 6,000 years old, because their story is that the world was created 6,000 years ago, right? So it's it is or however many years ago, but it's kind of like we're doing the same thing. We attach ourselves to stories that a certain worldview and a certain understanding of that worldview created in the Middle Ages or in ancient Greece or in the Renaissance or in the 1800s, 1900s, right? We attach ourselves to these worldviews and these stories, and we do everything to try and prove them. And even if the shoe doesn't fit anymore, it's kind of like we can't turn into Cinderella because the evil stepsisters, right, are trying to fit the shoe, and the evil stepsisters would be possibly intellect and reason, right? And not to say that we all need to go nutters, but occasionally in a good way, right? It's in a good way. But we're all afraid of going nutters in a bad way because we've already seen it so many times, I guess. But at the same time, it's almost like we're not going to get ahead unless we're learning to drop the story. And the same thing goes like in your personal life, you know. Um, a lot of people do these coachings or these webinars, seminars, go from teaching to teaching to teaching, and yet their life doesn't change and they get like a teeny tiny bit out of it. They don't get the full effect. They don't get the full. And why? Because they're so attached to the story. They're so attached to that narrative in their mind and they're unwilling to let go of it. And why? Out of fear, possibly. Fear of what? And now this is upon the collective and upon the individual in their personal lives to have a look at what is causing this resistance? Like, what is this within me that is resisting this information? So when I'm triggered, I look at the trigger. I don't attack the person that's delivering the message to me, right? That would be the evolved way of going about things. So on the collective level, we have to learn to do that as well. And we have to learn to accept that it's okay to drop the story. Once something has delivered its message, and its message is usually a transformation or a growth or a step forward, then we have to be willing to let that drop like phase one, like those parts of a rocket that drop off in order for the next chapter to emerge. And I feel like that's where we're stuck because we keep hanging on to the past. We keep looking to the past. We keep defining ourselves through the past. And while the past is important to a certain extent, yes, at the same time, we have to be able to let it go on an individual as well as on the collective level. And we see it clearly on the individual level why this is important, but on the collective, no less. And it feels like if we were able to let things go, if we were able to let go of the story and just dive into something new, open ourselves up for the wonders of the world. And that's why so many people have also lost the sense of wonder. And they ask me, Carlene, where can I find it again? Like this joy in life, this feeling of yay to be alive. And I'm like, you're full, you're full with information up to here. Your cup is full. There's nothing coming in there. So the only way to do it is to empty out the cup, to empty out everything we thought we knew, everything that we built ourselves on, and be willing to do that and be willing to go through those moments, because it really is only a couple of moments, weeks to months of uncertainty, of not knowing. And then all of a sudden new information starts filling in again. But there's this, we know the concept of spiritual ego, but there's also spiritual greed, right? Where people want all the information so that they can then utilize pieces of it to manipulate the whole. And it just doesn't work like that. So what I find important in this conversation between Terrence and Joe Rogan is he really explains why it's so important that we change ourselves, because he doesn't say it in that terminology, but it leads to that outcome. It leads to that realization that the universe itself creates pressure points, which lead into manifestation. So in order for those pressure points to change that lead into manifestation, we have to change. And then we get something else delivered. So part of what needs to change, of course, is the stories that we tell ourselves. Now, as an example, I had this years ago. I did an ayahuasca journey, as some of you guys know. This was my first years and years and years ago. And I had Mama Ayahuasca she showed me the stories that I was holding in my consciousness, but the way they showed it to me was like dia slides. I don't know if you guys remember dia slides, those dia slides nights where you'd roll down the screen and somebody would, pop out pictures, but they were in little dias. And so they would take them out. Mama Ayahuasca took out this rack of slides, like I had a whole bunch, and she just pulled one out. And it was enough for her to show me how it goes or how it works to understand. And so she pulls one out, one rack, and it's an entire rack, and she flips through the dias, and she pulls out one. And you guys know that to see the dia, you see it blown up on the screen or the wall. and a light has to shine through it, right? And that light is then it's like a filter, like a yeah, like those kaleidoscope thingies, right? And so she takes it out, and the dia that I saw, it was a very negative view on things regarding certain things out of my past, right? And she takes it out, and it wasn't that she was denying that this was true. She was saying, yeah, it's true, but there's another perspective too that's more beneficial to you. But she didn't actually say that, she showed it, right? So she took the dia out, and I saw what was cast on the wall, or the wall of my experience in my life, and she chucked it. She just threw it out. She's like, don't need this anymore. I'm like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden she plops in another one, because every time we pull one out, it has to be refilled, right? So she took out one story, threw it, and showed me how easy it is, and showed me that I'm still me. I'm still me, even though I let go of that story, right? Even though because that's a deep fear within some of us, is that if I let go of the story, then I'm not me anymore. So on one hand, we do appreciate and love ourselves, right? And are attached to that identity that we've created around ourselves. But on the other hand, we're not understanding that we're not that identity. We're not the story. We're not that. And so she really showed me that in that one exercise, because I was still standing there in the same way, and the story was just gone. And she'd replaced it with a different one. And oh my gosh, I could feel it in all my cells, everything, all my cells in my body were absorbing this new story that she put in, which was also a truth, but one that I wasn't focused on because it happened before I was able to see it, before I was able to perceive it or witness it. And but it was also a truth. And all of a sudden I felt different. I felt different, just different, and a more positive, more belonging, more grounded in a way, right? And so she showed me that I had to do this with all these slides that I was carrying within myself, right? Or all these dias. And so we started chucking out all of them. Like she would literally take out the rack and just throw them all out. And it was down to one. And I regret now, even though I shouldn't regret it, but I do kind of, because I wonder where I would be now if I had chucked that last one. But that last one was so important to me. And she did put a question mark around it. She's like, are you ready? Basically. And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not ready. And I do wish I had been ready, but I wasn't. And that's just the way it was. So I totally accept it. And it's gone now, anyways. But that last one I held on to for a while. And it was a safety blanket. But it's gone. Like I said, it's gone now. But the same way, the collective has to divest itself of its stories. And we've gotten into this rut where everything is dogmatized. That's just how we work with information, is we take it and we dogmatize it, whether it's on a spiritual level, a scientific level, a cultural level, a whatever level it's on, we take information and we dogmatize it. And all of a sudden, it becomes that's the way it's always been, but that's not true, right? So if we have different perspectives, then we start seeing different things. If we have different um angles of looking at things, then things appear differently, right? Khalil Gibran wrote this story in the book The Sand and Foam, and some of you guys know Khalil Gibran. If not, look him up. But he wrote about the blind man, right? Who was looking at or a man who was looking at a mountain or something, right? And the five senses starting to arguing with each other. So the eye says, I see this. And the ear goes, well, I don't hear what you say you're seeing. And the nose goes, I don't smell what you're hearing and what you're seeing. So they're all the five senses are like arguing with each other. And it really is like that. Now, the way I explain it is we're sitting inside of a house with five windows, and we're trying to explain the entire outer world from this perspective of sitting in a house with 5 windows. It's not going to work. We have to leave the house. We have to leave those security of the house. We have to leave those 5 windows or the 5 senses behind, because we see like this much of the electromagnetic spectrum, and yet we know that there's at least this much, and we see this much of it, right? Not even. And so we're trying to dogmatize and explain everything, that this is the way it is, and this is the way it has to be, and this is the way it's always been, with every single piece of information that we have. And it kind of stops us. It drags us down. It doesn't allow us to be flexible. It doesn't allow us to flow. It doesn't allow us to experiment. It doesn't allow us to do good things. It doesn't allow us to expand into something, and this dogmatization, this being stuck in a certain informational pattern is probably what's leading and causing to all the disharmony and disruption in our experience here as a collective, right? Because as we build up, as the changes come, we build up resistances to that change, and whatever is bringing that change needs to be resisted, and there has to be a force that goes against that natural change in things, that natural recognition, that natural breakdown. And we have to learn as a collective that this is okay. It's okay. It's okay to evolve. It's okay to change. It's okay to grow. It's okay to shift. It's okay to, not be afraid of what is to come, right? So not be afraid of other cultures or other peoples, or shifting a what we understand. I mean, a lot of cultures that we see as an eternal culture, they're not older than a couple hundred years, right? They're not. A lot of the cultures, if you dig into them, the way they're represented today at this moment, are not older than a couple hundred years, right? So what was before that, and before that, and before that, and before that? Why, when we do genealogy, are people always percentages of multiple things, right? So this is the bizarrest thing to me, is that this planet is limited in scope and size. So that means that everybody's related around 1,000 corners, but people still see differences enough to do what they do, And but I really feel that what's holding us back from stepping into this golden age, and what's also leading us down a pathway of possible difficulties to come when it comes to the evolution of our current technology, is this resistance to change. And we believe that tech is going to finally create some kind of stability in this volatile, changeable thing that we're living on, that can somehow balance all of that out. Kind of like ships balancers, so you don't feel the waves or the ocean anymore when you're on one of those ships, because it's always being balanced out. And we're hoping AI and technology is going to do that for us in our lives, that it's going to balance everything out so that we can have a smooth, steady sailing through life. But that's not what we're built for, and we won't evolve or advance if we do that, which means, like they're all saying, we'd have to attach ourselves to the tech. But that doesn't need to happen. It doesn't need to be, because the tech is not God, right? And if we attach ourselves to God, if we open up to God, then all the information of the universe could pour through eventually, right? So, I mean, inspiration, higher thinking, art, creativity, all of that can come from a real living source, a life source, a source of life, rather than something that we created. So it's kind of like putting the teacher in the hands of the students, or a god in the hand of its minions. It's just that's an even more upside down world than what we're living in now. So I really feel I need to talk about this unwillingness to change on a fundamental personal level amongst many people, as well as the collective unwillingness to change and the ultimate fear of change, the ultimate fear that whatever's coming, I won't be able to handle it, and it's going to do bad to me, and it's going to punish me, or it's going to, which is completely irrational. Why would it do that? So a lot of us have been taught this fear as well. I mean, so much has been Hmm. done to our consciousness that teaches us to fear life, that teaches us to fear every living moment instead of embrace it and welcome it in. Imagine your life if you could embrace every living moment that you're alive, if you could be totally open to it. And now imagine that times billions of people where the collective is totally open to every living moment. And I mean, there is no non-living moment actually, but in this shape, in this form, in this reality that we share, because this is a gift. It really is. It is absolutely and truly a gift. It is a one-time chance. And I feel like the societies and the cultures that we living in, there's such a focus on death and decay and dying and entropy. And I did an entire video on that, based on the writings of someone whose work I really recommend as well. But do we have a collective death wish? And where does this mindset come from that we're living nowadays, which is absolutely detrimental? So I feel like there has to be a change in our fundamental thinking and perceiving of the world, scientifically, especially as well. There needs to be some kind of a revamp. There needs to be a recycling. And I wish more people had the gumption or the guts to go against everything that's been taught and say, you know what, I'm going to empty out this cup. I'm full of information up to here, and I'm going to look at it from a different perspective or a different view. I mean, in my next life, if I come back, which I doubt I will, I don't want to, but who knows, like I really appreciate my life now. So I think life could be a sweet thing. I have no issues with the life itself, but the systems we've created, that's a whole other ballgame. But maybe I'll come back and do something in science or something, because it is fascinating. It really is. But I feel like as long as they're still basing their information on the premises that were created from faulty thinking and a faulty mind and a faulty perspective and a faulty outlook from 400, 500 years ago, we're missing so much. We're missing so many possibilities. We're missing so many understandings. We're missing so much. But at the same time, I'm trusting that life is bringing the right people in to open those doors and those portals for us. But it also starts with us, the collective, right? What do we demand? What do we ask for? What are we opening up to? What are we requesting? What are we requiring? And also in our spirituality, is this just escapism? Is this make-believe fantasy, or what are we doing, right? At the same time, though, we can't dogmatize everything. We can't say that these concepts are always true. Even the color of the wall, right now we're calling it white, so like my shirt, right? But in a couple of years from now or centuries from now, it might have a different name, a different association, a different connotation, a different, who knows, right? This used to be the color of grief in certain cultures. People would wear white for grief, not black. Up until, was it Queen Victoria, brides didn't wear whites. And now it's been dogmatized and all brides wear whites because white was a color of mourning. Ah, it's it's interesting. It's interesting to note. And also when it comes to nationalism, which I've spoken about in several of my year ahead videos, that I see that on the rise, and that's exactly what's happening, is it's been on the rise, right? worldwide, not just in specific areas. It's worldwide. Um, but what people are aligning themselves with and associating themselves with is not necessarily family and tribes, is it? I don't know. But if they're speaking about nationalism, nations, then those nations are not more than a couple 100 years old as they stand today. So what is that, you know? Yeah, I just thought I'd let this ramble out. And I'm excited to see your guys' comments in the comment section below. But I really feel that it's time on a personal and collective level to empty out the cup. It's the something has to give, and to get back into the flow of things and to start flowing ahead again. We have to release the stories of the past. We have to let all of it go. We have to not attach our identities and ourselves to that, because and dogmatize it, because that's what turns us into pillars of salt. That's what turns us into stone, and it doesn't flow. And even though we want stones under our feet, right? Sometimes, because we actually don't need it for agriculture. There it's a pain too, right? But we feel more secure with it sometimes, we think. Um, it's actually what's limiting us the most. It really is. It really is. And we have to learn to let go on a collective, let it go, right? So I feel the next generations are hopefully going to be taking a step in the right direction when it comes to that. But yeah, right now, as I tap into the collective, and I do that a lot for my readings, as you guys know, and it's very, 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 very icky. And it's there is hope, of course. Like, I don't want to be too, negative in the sense, and saying there's no hope. And no, 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 there is hope. There are a lot of people that are doing fantastic things, groups that are doing amazing things, a lot of people that are totally not into this at all whatsoever, just living their lives, just doing the best they can, and it's amazing. So on a whole, yeah, it's there are such and such, but as a collective total, as a global total, it's like, hmm, what are we doing, and why? And it's time to empty out the cup and let the stories be in the books, and we can look them up every now and then, but it's time to start singing a new song. It's time to start telling ourselves a new story. It's time to be willing to change and to address the desire for stagnation, the apathy, the unwillingness to change, the fear of change, the a denial that changes a reality, which we're going to experience in a living, breathing universe, because movement is change. As I move my arm, I'm changing the position of my hand, right? So anything that is alive moves. So in this living, breathing universe that we're living in, we're going to be experiencing change as a form of movement, as a form of, this is alive. It's not a challenge, it's not a punishment, it's an affirmation of life, that something is living. And I feel it's time for all of us to really be willing to change, and to change the stories, empty out the cup, let in something new, and see where it takes us. Bye.